When you're thinking about the future, you're anxious. And when you're thinking about the past, you're depressed. This comes back to presence.
Correct.
Always. It always comes back to presence.
Be here now.
Yes. One day at a time is so powerful. That's when I landed on the 4 areas that I needed to lock in. You know, I went back to my Goodwill Hunting, papers on the wall, placing it over here, this, and I was like, okay, if I was physically fit, doing the work with myself, being spiritual, introspective learning, finding presence and peace, being quiet, right? If I was doing that, if my relationship was great, and then, you know, if my income was growing or my business was growing or my impact was growing, if I could do those 4 things, I would be happy. And then so I thought, okay, well, what's always worked for me and my hardest thing I've ever done, which is getting sober. And that was one day at a time. So now what I try to do is I try to Kaizen mind, body, spirit business every day. And I built this system for me. I built this system because I needed to be liberated from the fucking madness that this world and social media and wanting that house right there, you know, in that like creates so much. It's scarce. It's scarce. And so, but I thought, okay, if I can Kaizen, MBSB every single day, I would be pretty happy. And I started to do it. And I started to get back to that, hey, let's just search out the uncomfortability. So why don't I focus on these other areas? You know, why don't I try to be happy? Why don't I try to find the fulfillment that I want?
Hey guys, my name's Troy Hoffman. I'm the founder of Selfawareness and the founder of Balancegenics and an executive mentor. What we do every week here is we're creating these things called Fireside chats. We basically transform this entire space into a studio every week. 4, 3. In the house today, we've got Walt Tabolina. Today in the studio, we have Ty Cannon. He's also one of the top anti-aging doctors in the country and probably even in the world. And what I want you to see is the opportunity to be exposed to all these different entrepreneurs, all these different people that can share their wisdom and insights, because one idea can change your life today.
They want to be part of the outcome, but they don't necessarily want to be part of the process because it's scary. And if they hear you say collision and they're afraid of conflict, I got to go to the restroom. I'm out of here.
I'm out of here. Yes, they've done that.
I realized there's over 27 different hormones and hormone metabolites that exert a tremendous effect on your body, your mind, your performance, and whether you live or die.
You can actually like apply something to that.
Oh, absolutely.
There are always conveyor belts next to me. One is total negativity, one is total positivity. They are always going. Negative thoughts, positive thoughts, anxious thoughts, depressed thoughts, you know, abundance thoughts, whatever, right? They're always going right here. And I have the ability to choose which one to get on, right? So while we're sitting here right now, all the cameras are on, people are gonna be watching, you know, I know that if I'm being totally authentic and in my abundance mindset and in my positive mindset, value will be delivered to someone. If you're present, you can choose which conveyor belt to get on.
One new concept, one new thing you can take back to your workplace, one new thing you can take back to your company, one new thing you can take back to your family to change the way you think and see and change everything about what you're doing and the actions you're going to take. All right, folks, welcome back to the Fireside Chat. Today in the house, we got Brodie Kern. We're doing this early in the morning. And we're here all the way from Springfield, Missouri today. So Brodie, thank you very much for being a part of this. Brodie, I actually have the awesome opportunity actually spending an entire week with Brodie right now. Him, his crew's here, his brother's here, he's 15, who's absolutely awesome too, Cole. I'm not sure Cole's out right now, but Cole's awesome. Brodie's like the best big brother you possibly ever could have when you're 15 years old, I think. And so Brodie's in town, he's doing a bunch of podcasts. I asked Brodie if he could be on the show. He said yes. He was gracious enough to be on here. He's building a huge Instagram following. He's impacting tons of young men's lives right now in the brotherhood that he launched. Him and his partner are building an amazing brotherhood of young men that are truly transforming their lives in all areas of mind, body, spirit, and business. And he's in the 4-dimensional life. He practices and preaches this. And I've now been able to been living with him now for a few days and actually watch him actually live it. And the awesome opportunity is when you actually are around somebody who does live this on a daily basis, you're like, wow, that's authentic. That's the authentic life. That's someone that actually practices what they preaches, and you can feel the heart of this man. I want you to really catch where this guy has come from drug addict to CEO. And so, Brodie, thank you very much. And I can't wait to you to share with the audience today, man, you're just your story. You know what I mean? Just man, how in the world did you end up from being this drug addict in your 20s and 4 times almost killing yourself? And now you're sitting here with an amazing mini empire going right now. You've crushed it in real estate. You're selling 75 plus homes a year. You built this other business up. I mean, in 4 years, you went from 0 to hero, massively in huge ways. You know what I mean? And and even last night, we're hearing this other guy going, "You're the guy that everybody wants to be." And man, what's this story and what happened that made you so dynamic, I think? And how can other people hear this story today? So I'd love to dive into this, man. Just share with everybody. This is the wide angle camera, and this is your camera, and man, just share away right now. I'd love to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate the introduction. It's been a pleasure staying here and getting connected. You know, we hadn't connected that much before, and this is more hospitality than anyone has given me. So it's been amazing to come out here, really spend some time with you guys, and get things going. You know, and I guess to dig into my story, the best place to really start my story is around age 21. You know, at the year that I was 21 is when my addiction had really ramped up. Things had gotten really, really bad. I burned all the relationships in my life, and I wasn't going to survive. That year I ended up, I overdosed six times.
Wow.
3 of which being in the same week. And then, that is what led me to eventually dropping out of college to go to rehab. But, in that I learned a ton about myself, right? After I got the clarity when I went to rehab. But it's the problem is I was afraid to be alone with my own thoughts. I grew up with an alcoholic mother, and she was very mentally abusive, right? She was manipulative, played head games. And as a child, I remember, all the time because I was 50% with my mom and 50% with my dad. And so the 50% of the time I spent with my mom, I would come home to really just try to get through the night with as little stress as possible, right? Because she would be drinking, and no matter how much I did, no matter how many chores I did, how good I was, and because I was a good kid. I've always been good at stuff, right? I was good at sports. I was good at school. I had friends, but then I would come home, and there was just so much contrast, right? I was so confused as a child, a teenager, a young adult, because outwardly things appeared to be good. When I was at my father's house, things were good. I had a very stable father, a very stable stepmother, and then I would go to my mother's house, and it was a different story, and so that started to build this deep-seated insecurity, right? Everything outside was still going well, but this deep-seated insecurity was starting to fester. And it was starting to grow. And then I started to question myself. I started to think about how others perceived me, because I would come home and think about, how is my mom perceiving this action, right? And this just grew. And it grew gradually. I wasn't cognizant of it at the time. I didn't really even figure out that this was the issue until years later. But ultimately what happened is by the time I go to college, I didn't know who I was. And the identity issue wasn't that I didn't fit in anywhere. It was that I fit in everywhere, right? I was able to be a chameleon and pop in with different crowds. Baseball had always been a huge part of my life. And whenever I chose not to play baseball in college because I wanted to go party, I knew that I, really liked partying at that point. That became my identity. That was it. I was the best at partying. I was the most fun. And that was it for me. And, I had kind of and then at this point, it's so weird thinking about how my young mind thinks. I see my 15-year-old brother. He's much more reasonable than I was. Yeah. Everybody's assumption was that I was going to be dead at 20. Because, if we dial it back a little bit, I started smoking pot at 13. I started messing around with harder drugs around 16. Still recreational at that point. Started drinking pretty heavily, 17, 18. And then when I went to college, it became, 7 days a week. And
so 7 days a week, you were consuming How much alcohol here?
So what was happening is, pretty much Monday through Friday, I was going out to the bar, drinking at the fraternity house. And I mean, who knows? Like at minimum, I was consuming a fifth of alcohol, right? We were killing it.
Yeah.
And, and we'll kind of get into how bad my alcoholism was here in a minute. But then, so my routine back then is I would drink and I would do cocaine 5 days a week, right? The first 5 days. And then Saturday and Sunday, I would do Xanax to recover my body. I would just sleep, right, for 2 days. And then I would start it over. And I went to the University of Missouri where all the classes were 500-person lectures.
Yeah.
They didn't take attendance. All I had to do was pass 5 tests over the whole semester. And I could study for a day, pass the test, no problem. So, I was convinced that I was doing okay. I had good grades.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? My parents thought that things were good. Like, they didn't really understand what was going on. And I carried that on for about a couple of years, 18, 19, about halfway through the year that I was 20, things kind of started to turn. Started to get worse, a lot more hard drugs. I was having
You're doing cocaine. What else were you doing?
I was doing cocaine. Xanax was very big for me. I hadn't gotten into any of the harder stuff yet. I was doing a lot of ecstasy.
Got it.
As well. And then so the year that I was 21, like I remember having my first like real scare. And what had happened is I went back down to Springfield from the University of Missouri to see my family. It was like, I think I came home for Halloween. And I ended up staying in Springfield for a week. I partied all that week. And then on the way back, I didn't drink for 2 days. And this has never really happened before. I didn't go without drinking. But I remember my body was feeling really bad. I'd been doing a lot of drugs that week. And my dad was driving me back up to Columbia, where University of Missouri is, and we stopped at a Walmart halfway up he was going to get some groceries for me. And I remember being at the checkout line, and I remember being like, man, I feel weird. And I ended up dropping, and I had a full grand mal seizure right in front of my dad.
Wow.
I woke up in the back of an ambulance. And because...
So lucky your dad was there.
I know, but...
I mean, like...
Yeah, but see, looking like my dad is such a sweet man, and it's the most traumatizing thing he's ever been through. I feel so bad that he had to go through that, and then this thing stuff like this started. That was the first time, but it started to become a regular occurrence.
Yeah.
Hospital visit here, alcohol poisoning, overdose. Just here and there. And
For how long was this going on for?
That went on for about 8 or 9 months. And then, to me, at the time in my head, I was always just chalking it up to just pushed it a little hard last night. We'll be a little more cognizant this time, or like now I know that I can't handle that exact concoction, so let's try this one over here. And I was always playing with how far. It was a science to me, right? It was like, how can I stay alive? Because I didn't have much of an appetite. I didn't eat much. Like I remember, like a lot of times before I would go out. I would just consume like some bread and some water.
Yeah.
Not only because I couldn't afford much more, but my body wouldn't tolerate anything else.
Pretty expensive drug habit then.
Yeah, I mean at that point,
blowing a lot of money right now.
I had a $300-$400 a day cocaine habit, plus what we were spending out, and that just it takes a toll on the body, dude. And then so. I left the University of Missouri, right? Like, I had burned all the relationships. My roommates that I had at the time hated me. They're like, you got to get the fuck out. Like, go. And so I moved back down to Springfield to try to put my shit together.
Yeah.
And I get back down to Springfield. I start hanging out with some of my buddies, and they're all doing heroin. And that wasn't something that was at the University of Missouri, but it was very popular in Springfield. This was at the beginning, and this was at the beginning of this. Like right now, the huge topic of conversation is the opioid crisis. This wasn't really, there wasn't much conversation going on about it. This was 6 years ago.
This was in Arizona where that was a huge issue. And
right. No, I mean, we're in Missouri, right? Like, and this was 6 years ago. And I remember, at that time, I had no fear. Addicts, they always have that next thing. Oh, I would never do that. Right. Well, first it's like, I would never do meth. I would never do heroin. Then I would never smoke these things. Then I would never use a needle. And these are all, commitments that you break with yourself. And knowing what we know now about, self-confidence, self-trust, like this is just detrimental to everything that's going on. And you know, I had no fear. Like by that point, like heroin was not a scary term, right? And so I jumped on that train for a while, but luckily. My body was basically already shut down because I was still drinking heavily every day. I couldn't get away from that no matter what. That was my, alcohol was my guy.
And you're consistently 6-7 days a week.
Oh, all the time.
Like all the time.
Well, because I had found at this point now that if I stopped for even a couple days, I was at risk for seizure.
Really?
So that was
your body's so used to it.
Yeah, so like
you needed it.
I was like a shakes in the morning kind of guy until because I was when I moved back, I was serving tables at this pizza place.
Yeah.
And if I didn't have a couple drinks, my hands I couldn't hold them still enough to serve.
Wow.
And this is crazy because you see this in 40, 50-year-old alcoholics,
correct.
Right? But
I mean, your body, you've done so much up to that point.
Right.
I've watched my friends in like high school that started drinking that were in fraternities that in their late 20s, like 29, 30 maybe, have problems. In their 40s finally say, I finally have to go through detox programs because they just can't sustain it. They gained a lot of weight or...
Right.
I mean, I've even lost roommates. One of my best friends I lived with for a long time literally drank himself to death, but he was in his late 30s.
Yeah.
Never had any other problems till then. But like just literally drank himself to death. Like they had to go and like bust down the door to find me. He didn't show up for work for 3 days in a restaurant situation. Lost so many people to alcoholism. Like
and I mean it's crazy, man. And I have too. I have friends who, multiple who I used to run with, used to hang with every day. My closest friends back then, who honestly I was a little bit worse than, or some of them a lot worse. And they didn't make it out. There's been dozens of times where I probably should have died.
I lost my best friend Travis to overdose and
it's
and alcohol, like a combination.
Yeah.
So depression medication, alcoholism, some drugs, 3 things. Just
and that was
he died in his sleep.
So gnarly.
Best friend, smartest guy you've ever met, most motivated guy ever. Like
so gnarly.
Yeah.
So gnarly, and it brings a sense of gratitude because it's like that should be me.
Well, that's what I said. Even like last night when we were talking, man, there's a calling in your life, or there's like the universe or God or something that's like on you to do something great. You know what I mean? So what happened like during this time? Like what was that final that tipping point where like you have all this shit going on, you're fucking your life up massively, and all of a sudden something happened, and you made the shift and the change. I know there was a relapse, but you massively made a shift, not just a little shift, but you went from one extreme going this way to total death to this way to total life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what happened is, and we'll get into the relapse as well, but really when I went to rehab, that was.
So why'd you even go to rehab? Like what finally tricked to say, shit, I've got to change?
So Sunday night, and this is late April 2015. Sunday night, I overdosed on heroin. I was drinking, took some Xanax. Then I went over this Stope House, and these guys gave me some heroin, and I just dropped there. Woke up in the hospital. That was day 1. Next day, I'm like, okay, like that sucked. Got to change it up a little bit. Had too many things last night, right? So I did some heroin again that day, and it happened again. Right? Woke up in the hospital again, and I was like, damn it, man! Like, what is going on? Like I wasn't even going that hard. Like my body was just truly starting to shut down. I wasn't doing anything way out of what I had done all this stuff before a ton of times.
I just couldn't.
It literally couldn't take it. So then that night, I just 2 days in the hospital in a row, and I'm like, okay, I'm done, right? And then I said, okay, I'm gonna go. My buddies hit me up, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go out and have a couple of drinks, just take the edge off. I was clearly just totally panicked, and I thought a couple beers will help, right? If you fast forward, about 3.5, 4 hours, I'm getting picked up off the ground in downtown Springfield by 2 police officers, and they had me blow into a breathalyzer, and I blew a 0.45 BAC, and so it's just so gnarly. Like, and so for the individuals watching, listening,
it's like 4.5 times over the legal limit.
Yeah, the average individual will be dead at 0.4.
Yep.
And so. I wake up in 4-point restraints at the hospital. I had a catheter in. I've actually never told this story. I had a catheter in, and I literally, I was so pissed and stressed. I like chewed myself out of these restraints. I pulled this catheter out, and I tried to walk out the door. I got detained again. But from that point, I was just like I was literally like, I have to get out of here and have to get to somewhere where like I can figure out what to do with my life. But in there, I could not. But I ended up getting detained again, and my stepmother, this is 6 a.m. I finally get a hold of someone to pick me up, and I just said, take me to rehab. It was so clear that I was like, it was a miracle that I was even alive. And from there, I went home, we packed a bag, we called the rehabs, luckily someone in Boonville, Missouri, middle of fucking nowhere, got me in. There was like one bed.
That's awesome.
And in there, so then what happened, is I'm in a 28-day inpatient rehab facility, and they had a lot of books. And all that I could do is smoke cigarettes and read books. That was legitimately it.
So what were these books, man? Like, what were these? What'd you read?
So I read.
We haven't got to this point yet.
Yeah, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad. I read
Awesome.
I read Think and Grow Rich.
Amazing.
I read a fair amount of fiction, but some powerful stuff. Like I remember I read and then I also read one book that is never talked about that I read in rehab and just absolutely loved. It was the American Sniper book.
Oh yeah.
The Chris Kyle book.
Yeah.
It was
great book.
Man, it was.
Yeah.
I had never read before.
Yeah.
Right? Reading was not my jam.
Yeah.
But I had, it's like being in prison. I had absolutely
nothing you could do but just sit there and read.
Literally nothing else to do.
Yeah.
I could only smoke so many cigarettes.
And it's amazing how just 28 days of reading can change your whole psychology for a long period of time. Just a few great books.
And then also in the time there, the more and more sobriety you get, the more clarity you gain. I mean, I even think now, like sometimes I'm like, wow, I'm even more fucking clear than I was at a year and a half sober, or 2 years sober. And I always think like, oh, I've got to be totally opened up, like crystal clear now. And just more and more keeps coming because you see, the thing is like now looking back, I know how much energy and how much fire was in me, and I was just drowning it with water. Right.
Correct.
But like that ember stayed.
Yeah.
That ember stayed, but I was just drowning it. And so like in my time in rehab, the fire caught some wind and it started to, catch a leaf and started to get a little bigger and a little bigger. And and each day that I didn't drink was a win. Each minute that I didn't think about drinking was a win. And all of a sudden you start to gain this momentum internally. And so, by the end of the time I was in rehab, I was feeling like $1 million. I went through a little moment of fear leaving there because that was my safe place. No one was around. I didn't have a phone. But then I got out of rehab and I was ready to go. Luckily the owner of the pizza place that I worked at, she was in recovery, and she gave me my job back. I got back on my feet, and then I like immediately, it's like I'd always just been a server at this place, and within like 3 weeks of me coming back, they're like, we need you to manage. Yeah. And I was like, oh, that's cool, right? Like I didn't even, it was never even in my mind. And then, I wanted to change things up, wanted to run things my way, wanted to have a different system. And I couldn't get a job outside of this pizza place. Like nobody was going to hire me. I was a month out of rehab, college dropout. Like it just, that wasn't in the picture. And so, I never had these big aspirations. I never had aspirations of living past 20. From the time I was 16, when I was young, sure, I wanted to play pro baseball or be a lawyer or whatever, but then I started to think, wow, like I can really do something here. And obviously couldn't get a job. And so I knew that I had to find something for myself. Real estate, luckily I had this friend from back in the day who was 2 years older than me. He was doing very well in commercial real estate. And he's like, dude, you should get your license. Super low barrier to entry. All I had to do was take a class and pass a test. Took the class, great. The test, you have to pass a state test and a national test. And so the first time I passed the national test, and then I failed the state test by 2. Then I failed the state test by 2 again. And at this point, I had really fucked myself up here because I was like, my entire life is riding on this. And like, it's so funny now because I barely sell any real estate. I've other than buying real estate, I'm so far from that world, right? But I was like, the rest of my life is riding on this right now.
Correct.
And this, this goes to show like how 21, 22-year-olds are. They're so stressed. Like everything's so important. And like, that's just not the case, man. No. But I ended up passing, like I almost drank over that test. I remember I called my first sponsor in AA, who actually lives here in OC. He's an amazing dude, great business, great life. But I would call him all the time. That's what you do in AA, and I would be like, dude, I'm gonna drink over this test. And I just remember him being like, yeah, dude, like that beer is really gonna help you sell a lot of houses. You should do it. And I was like, fuck. He used to just tell me the wrong shit all the time. I would call him and I would be like, Sean, I'm gonna drink. I'm gonna use. I'm panicking, and he would be like, okay, just do it. And I would be like, no, like talk me out of it. And it was such a good lesson though, because I already had the answers. And that's what he wanted me to understand.
We were talking about like why I'm with Garrett. I didn't even call Garrett. I just know.
Right. You literally look at the phone and you're like,
I already know the answer.
Fuck,
Okay,
right.
I just got to do it.
Exactly.
Do the work.
Exactly.
Almost everybody knows what to do in life. You just got to do the work, right? I mean, like
that's it, man. That's it. And so like then, what happened is I got into real estate. This fire was still, it was there. It was there again. And I just had every second that I was calling or thinking about business or learning about self-development, I wasn't thinking about drinking. So I did a lot of that. And I was still going to AA.
A lot of self-development.
So
like what specifically were you doing?
So I really got.
What were you reading? Like
I really got into meditation. I was learning meditation. I was learning presence. I was doing a lot of reflection, a lot of introspective learning, trying to dissect. I picture like my old piss-filled apartment. I had this one-bedroom apartment. My dog just pissed all over because I was never there. I didn't have time to take him out. So like, it was the most embarrassing place to bring anyone. You couldn't bring anyone there unless they like their nose didn't work. And but I picture it being like I would literally just like write out all my thoughts. I picture it being like Good Will Hunting style shit, and I would just be like, oh, this like lines up with this. This makes sense. And rather than and I was listening to a lot of Grant Cardone. I was studying sales, but what was really happening is I was just learning about myself. Because I knew because the only thing getting in my way was me. I did have that level of self-awareness. I knew that you are a self-destructive individual. Anything good comes, you'll fuck it up. And I had to figure that out. And, so I was reading anything I could get my hands on, dude. I mean, I was reading everything from sales books, stoicism, a lot of Alan Watts, things that really just helped me quiet my mind, and then things that helped me move the needle forward in business. And so, you
love the stoicism.
I love
and
stoicism.
Everyone loves stoicism right now.
Anyone who digs into it.
It's so it's like the thing right now.
Yeah, stoicism right now is definitely the hottest girl in the room. Everybody wants to talk about it. And it's funny because they should be. It's amazing.
It's amazing.
But it hasn't been popular in such a long time. It's so weird to me. So my favorite book that I've ever read is actually this book by Robert Wright called Why Buddhism is True. And it gives a real practical, logical breakdown of, not necessarily like old school Buddhism, but this idea of Western Buddhism and like why these practices are so effective. And that book single-handedly like changed the course of my life.
That's awesome.
But so, to get back on track here, I was spending all my time learning, and then I was spending all my time executing. I've never had any fear. Well, I should rephrase that. I don't know if there's a difference between not having fear and then having fear and not acting on it. I've never acted on it. You see, it doesn't matter fear is always the compass for all of society, right? But guys like you and I, we see fear, we see uncomfortability, we charge it, right? Then the average individual, they see fear and they go for comfortability, right? How can I get around this? How can I go in the opposite direction? But what they don't see is like that this fear is this big wall, and on the other side is everything they've ever wanted. And so, but I've always understood that. I don't know if it was I was a glutton for pain, suffering. Like I have always had this, ability to suffer, but like I always charged it. I always charged it.
Success is a willingness to bear pain to achieve a mighty purpose.
Yeah, love it.
Like it's like all of success is the willingness to bear pain to achieve a mighty purpose. And everybody we interview here, they've gone through an extreme amount of discipline and just pain to get to wherever they're at. Like, it's crazy. So keep going.
Yeah, and I mean, so I started to understand this,
Yeah.
right? And then I wanted to get uncomfortable. So I knew that if sales, whatever was making me uncomfortable, that's what I needed to be doing. If I said, and so there were people in real estate who were telling me, like, this is what you do. You generate leads, you cold call them, you set appointments, you close the deal. So if I had an uncomfortability around getting on the phone, I needed to be on the phone all day, right? Until it was comfortable.
That's good.
You have to make the uncomfortable comfortable.
Yes, I love it.
So I was doing
Love
that.
that.
And
Yeah.
then, if it was actually asking for the deal in person,
Yeah.
that would scare me because I had no experience in this.
Yeah.
So I would do that. I would ask over and over and over. And like I always, the willingness, what you said, success is the willingness to bear failure.
To bear pain.
Right?
To achieve a mighty purpose.
And there's so many great things that I learned in AA, man, is like, that's why I had the willingness. Because in AA, I had to, number one, go through the acceptance that I was always going to be an alcoholic, no matter what.
Yeah.
And then, I did not grow up in a religious family. I did not grow up, I've been to church maybe a couple times in my life. I never liked that. And in AA, they force you to find some sense of a higher power.
Correct.
And my first time, the reason that I ended up relapsing is because I couldn't do that. But eventually, what allows me to be sober today is that I had a willingness to open up and find some sort of a higher power.
What was that?
So eventually, whether I call it the universe or whatever, what it comes down to is I'm not the center of the universe, right? I feel that I'm connected to you. We're connected to that, lemon tree outside. Right. Like, there is a vibrational frequency going on in the world. And I know this from, things like my abundance bell. I've seen it work wonders in my life whenever I put out a vibrational frequency of desire, of belief, of abundance. Watching.
So real quick, you got to hear about the abundance bell real quick. And
Okay.
I'm walking, I'm having this deep conversation with somebody. Brodie walks up and he goes, ring this when there's abundance going on. He's like, ding, ding. So share about the abundance bell real quick. It's awesome.
So I have this bell. Picture like a front desk bell.
Yeah, like the teacher or something. Yeah, front desk
Yeah,
bell.
front desk bell. The secretary's behind there, and you're like, ding, ding. So I actually took this idea from someone else. His name's Charlie Rocket. He's on social media. But I saw it and I loved it. And I've always studied the law of attraction. I've studied quantum physics. I've studied, how that stuff really works. And I saw it. It makes so much sense. And I'm like, okay, when I ring this, I put out the frequency of my desires.
Yeah.
Right? Sound creates motion. Emotion creates the vibration. It goes out into the space, the ethos, the world, whatever. And then what I've learned in my experience in life and talking to other individuals, studying other individuals, is whatever is going on internally, life will mirror back to you. Life will return that back.
Yes.
So if I have abundance going on in here, life will always return that back to me. But if I have scarcity internally, life will return me more scarcity. And then so you have to pay attention.
And it's very true. Like,
it's so true.
It's so true. When I was living in pure scarcity, all I brought was more scarcity. Like, fuck, how do I get out of this? This sucks so bad. And then you start acting in abundance, and this more comes, and more great opportunity, not just money, but people and love, and just all these great, cool connections. Yep. Like, we have a whole room full of amazing people right here that are just awesome.
All of this
you know
stuff.
What I mean?
Like Hassan, my guy, for example, right? He's made a dramatic change in my business. We've become amazing friends. I was looking for Hassan. I literally manifested Hassan. Like, he hit me up out of nowhere. I didn't know that there was anyone as good as him in Springfield who was willing to work, willing to deal with my intensity, willing to go through in Springfield, right? Like, willing to go through what I put him through, and I was looking for that. But see, like, when you're attracting these things, you have to pay attention to the internal dialogue, and this is why I struggled for so long.
So what was your internal dialogue at that moment? Like, what was going on?
So before what was happening is I was saying, I need more. I'm not where I want to be yet, right? And while that seems good, you have goals, you want to keep going, right? But what you're actually saying, when you look at it, is what you're actually saying is, I don't have enough.
Correct.
And when you say that, you have a lack. right? You don't have what you want. Life will return you more of that.
Correct.
And so to get back to the abundance bell, I thought, okay, I can train my physiology to get excited whenever I ring this bell, right?
Yes.
And so if I can create that vibration just by ringing that bell, life's going to return it back. And so it's such a simple, fun concept. Logically, from a quantum physics perspective, it makes total sense. I take it with me everywhere. And so I was going through a funk when I bought that bell.
So what are you thinking now, and what do you do specifically?
So now, so then what everything always comes back to is being present. Because my brain, we know, like my best thinking will get me drunk and addicted to drugs.
So you're here. You're just being present.
I'm here now.
We're in this room. We're in this amazing room with all these amazing guys and girls around us doing cool stuff. We're having this amazing conversation. You're being present.
Right.
And then what's the thought that's attracting more to you? How are you being? What are you thinking? And then when you hit the bell, what are you thinking about?
Yeah,
specifically?
okay.
So other people, as they're watching this right now, right, they can say, oh, I'm learning this one thing from Brodie, like, and why it works. How do I do it, and why does it work?
Yeah, so let me paint the picture like this, right? There are always two. I picture two like conveyor belts next to me, or treadmills next to me, or like the flat like escalators, whatever they're called, next to me, right? One is total negativity, one is total positivity. Right. They're always going negative thoughts, positive thoughts, anxious thoughts, depressed thoughts, abundance thoughts, whatever, right? They're always going right here. And I have the ability to choose which one to get on, right? So while we're sitting here right now, all the cameras are on, people are going to be watching, thoughts are coming through the mind of, are you teaching well? Are you speaking well? How are you sitting? How is this being perceived, right? And if I'm not present, almost everyone's brain will at least give some energy to these thoughts over here, these negative ones, right? But if you're present, you can choose which conveyor belt to get on. 100%. You can say, you know what, I see these things, I acknowledge these things, I know what they are, this is just an anxious thought, this is not the reality, right? I know that, when it really comes down to it, all that matters, like, all that I wanted was this connection with you.
Correct.
Right? And I know that if I'm being totally authentic and in my abundance mindset and in my positive mindset, value will be delivered to someone. Correct. I know that internally, right? And then so when you have that, you start to, and you hop on this bell, you start to adopt the thinking that I already have everything that I need.
And you're thinking that right there.
Yep.
And then you hit the bell.
Clear. Right. And then picture also, like, you've spent time with individuals who are very, very good at NLP, right? Think about an NLP trigger, right? You can use an NLP trigger, whether you're like whatever it is, this, snap, to get your body ready, stand up straight. Like if you want to feel more physiological. If you want to feel more confident, you sit up straight, you put your chest out, you talk big, right? And so this type of thing, training it to where that bell creates that excitement. Every time
it's a full feedback loop.
Yes.
And you're constantly looping. You're like,
every time I ring
okay, I'm going to have way more coming to me right now. And all this amazing moment where I have a ding, 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 sends out energy, and like, oh, well,
boom.
Because I'm hearing the ding, I'm thinking more abundance is coming. And it's just it's like a full circle every time. So
totally.
It's amazing.
It's so cool.
That's awesome.
It's so cool.
So the question I have for you out there today while you're listening right now is what are you doing to acknowledge your own success? Like, you're hearing about Brodie's growth patterns right now, like what he's actually gone through, like his challenges. And I mean, anyone watching this today, anyone who's kind of like has got their own addictions. Like, I dealt with my own addictions for years. Like, I battled with cigarettes, I battled with nicotine, and for me it was a battle until I just finally I just don't want this anymore. This is not me. I was able to release it, and one of the great websites for me was whyquit.com for you. I love you. Whyquit.com. That's for my boy Hassan. We're bonding. And, but that was one of the big things for me, right? Like with my addiction, and finally be able to release that. Nothing like what you went through, but there's always something in some of us, right? And as you're watching Brodie today, like, what are you relating to, and how are you hearing the story, and what choice can you make to start transforming your life today? And hearing Brodie's story and taking the fuel and the energy, like, it's very rare you're going to meet someone with this much fuel and this much energy, had drastically changed his life. And I wish we could have more time to really dive deep into some of the story. And I can't wait till Brodie actually comes out with a full book on this whole thing. There's so many bits and pieces that he hasn't even shared in this story. There's so many more pieces I've heard in segments that he hasn't even shared yet. So if you can follow him on Instagram, here's some of the great stuff, man, he's putting out all over the internet. It's amazing right now. So Brodie, let's talk about where you're at now.
Yeah.
Okay. Because this guy has done the real estate gig, got to 75 house, had a whole crew of people making calls for him, all kinds of amazing things in such a short period of time. Because he just got up every day and he did the work. He practices this thing that he's calling his, and everyone else out there that is he's kind of aggregated, but he lives it. This mind, body, spirit business. Every day he's practicing the 4-dimensional man. And what is he going to do for his mind? What is he doing for his body? What is he doing for his spirit? What is he doing in business? And every day, consistently, day in, day out, day in, day out. After a full day of meetings, he comes back, runs 4 miles, quickly showers, and jumps into the next thing. And it's like every day he's doing it, eating healthy, having food delivered in from a local vegan place. Like little things you watch in a person and you can see why the success occurs. And I want you to catch that and feel the energy today from Brodie. Like literally feel it as it's coming across through this camera, through the mic, and say, like, what is one thing I can do in myself to say, start acknowledging the abundance in my own life? Is it a bell? Is it just saying, hey, texting someone and say, hey, here's something amazing happened in my life. Sharing someone else, like whatever it is, that's gonna be your trigger to say, man, I'm just living in abundance. I wake up and say I'm the most blessed man alive when talking to people sometimes. Like hopefully someone argues or sell that to Jeremy. He'll be here later today, but like just for the fun of it. And a friend of mine told me that one day and I was like, oh, I love that.
It's so interesting you say that.
Yeah.
So my for everyone listening, my business partner, who we'll talk about this business, but his name is Brian Donovan and he's here. And I just woke him up a little bit ago and I said, how are you? And he said, I'm grateful. I said, fuck yeah. Fuck yeah.
Yeah, he's the most he's brilliant.
Totally.
He's the nicest guy, so brilliant. He's 23 and he just cares so deeply about producing amazing content.
Yeah.
And marketing. And he's Brian was even walking around last night with this sheet of paper that he put together, just studying his notes so he can apply his own marketing principles to even you guys. Like,
he's a beast.
I mean at 23 the guy is so lasered in. He's read the books, he watches the videos, he hangs out with the best of the best, and he does the work. I mean, just grinds and grinds. You can just feel it. So
good.
Where are you now and what are you trying to accomplish? Like, because of all this pain of the past, it opened up this gap of the possibilities of the future for you, and now you have this vision that you want to implement now, right? And we've been talking about this even, how do you get more out? How do you get this message to impact more lives? How do we get more people, not even just one of you out there, but thousands of people like you that are out there sharing their stories and saying, hey, I was really fucking my life up. And I went from way over here to married with a beautiful wife, an amazing kid, like an amazing company, amazing people around me, super healthy, working out, training, doing all these amazing running events you're doing right now and triathlons, everything else, and training for this stuff. And you went from here to here, and now you're out there sharing with people how they can live this amazing life. Like, what's this vision and where are you going with it? Where do you want to go? So
absolutely.
Share.
So yeah, to give some context, what happened is I went on to build a real estate business. I went on to build another business. I got into another venture, and this whole time, I was starting to really make some real money, especially for where I live, making more money than I ever dreamt of making. But I wasn't fulfilled. No. I was with the woman that I'm now married to, but the relationship was struggling. Mm-hmm. I was overweight. I was not spiritual. I had gotten into meditation early on, but I had gotten away from that in my,
your hustle.
Yeah, in my hustle, in my pursuit of success,
Correct.
Right? And to me, success at that time was just financial success. And I thought that's what it was to everyone, right? But then I would look online, and guys would be more fit than me. They would be more spiritual. They'd have better relationships, and they were making more money.
Yeah.
I thought, what the fuck? Like, I'm doing everything that I can. And so I walked away from everything that I was doing. This is, shortly before I got married. I knew I cannot roll into this marriage like this. We had just gotten news that my wife was pregnant with our son Cruz. And I knew that I could not be living this life anymore. Yeah. And I started to dial it back to the things that really worked for me. I hadn't been in AA very much in a while. And in AA, the most powerful thing I ever learned is this cliche saying of one day at a time. When you're thinking about the future, you're anxious. And when you're thinking about the past, you're depressed. This comes back to presence.
Correct.
Always. It always comes back to presence.
Be here now.
Yes. And then so I started to adopt this really line of thinking, and I always had, but I didn't realize it. Like, one day at a time is so powerful, because what I was doing, and then, so I started, that's when I landed on the 4 areas that I needed to lock in. I went back to my Goodwill hunting, papers on the wall, placing it over here, this, and I was like, okay, if I was physically fit, I was doing the work with myself, being spiritual, introspective learning, finding presence and peace, being quiet, right? If I was doing that, if my relationship was great, if I was learning, if I was continuously learning, I'd gotten away from that and just working, thinking I knew it, ego. And then, if my income was growing, or my business was growing, or my impact was growing, if I could do those 4 things, I would be happy. And then so I thought, okay, well, what's always worked for me, and my hardest thing I've ever done, which is getting sober. And that was one day at a time. So then I started to really look, and then so I landed on the principle of Kaizen, right? Continuous improvement. Like, I literally have Kaizen tattooed on my leg.
I love it.
Like, it's so important to me. 1% better every day. So now what I try to do is I try to Kaizen mind, body, spirit, business every day. And I built this system for me. I built this system because I needed to be liberated from the fucking madness that this world and social media and wanting that house right there that creates.
You want that grass, not that house, right?
I want that grass.
You want the grass right there, not the house.
Like, I look at that and
you
I'm
literally
like,
said that, yeah.
I'm like, man, I'm not where I want to be, right? Like, I need that fat lot right there. And that, like, creates so much. It's scarce.
Yeah.
It's scarce. And so, but I thought, okay, if I can Kaizen, MBSB, every single day, I would be pretty happy. And I started to do it. And I started to get back to that, hey, let's just search out the uncomfortability. I'm not even going to worry about how much money I'm making right now. I've made money. I know what to do. If I need to, if things get low, I know how to make money right now. Yeah. Right? I trust my ability to do that. Correct. So why don't I focus on these other areas? Why don't I try to be happy? Why don't I try to find the fulfillment that I want? And all of a sudden I found it, and not only that, but my income just exploded out of nowhere. People were coming at me with shit. I didn't even know where. I didn't even know where it was coming from. And because of that, I was like, man, I'm really onto something. I was in better shape than I had ever been. I was knocking down challenges that I never thought I would. Physical challenges, mental challenges, just things that were truly difficult. And I was feeling so rewarded. And that's when I got onto social media. I thought, okay, why don't I take this to other individuals who are sober? My initial thinking on Instagram was, maybe I can help some dudes get sober, because I've always thought that
100%, yeah.
I've always thought that addicts are some of the most powerful people on the planet. 100%. Like, they'll go to lengths that a normal, like, you give me an addict who is incredibly self-developed, and then an average individual, a not addict who is incredibly self-developed, I'll bet my money on that person every single time. Like, I know what I would do. Like, if I will do what I would do to get loaded,
you'll do anything to get your drug of choice, whatever that is.
Right.
It's like whatever.
Yeah. No matter what. Like,
you walk 6 miles through the jungle somewhere to find a cigarette.
I'll get what I want.
Like, you know what I mean?
Right. And so then whether that be
2 a.m.
Right. And then so whether that be, running a 50-mile race.
Yes.
Or hitting this, growing my business to this point, reaching X amount of people this year with my business. I became obsessed. Became totally obsessed. And what happened is I started to pick up traction on social media. I started to take the MBSB system, that message of 1% better every day, this 4-dimensional way of life, to other young men. And they started to eat it up. I took on a couple clients.
And now you're at 50 plus people right now, currently 50 full-time. You're coaching 50 full-time, individually coaching this massive brotherhood of men that's like crushing it.
Yeah.
Crushing it. One guy went from $5,000 a month to $100,000 a month.
Yep.
So what were some of the weight loss things that have happened? Like the physical goals that have happened?
I mean, we have guys who, have all of them dramatically increased their income. Some of them that much, which is crazy. Yeah. But then, we've got guys who they lost 15 pounds. One guy we have, he hit me up yesterday. He's like, bro, I've meditated every day for 176 days, and he tattooed "Wake Up Wealthy" on his arm.
That's awesome.
And so, the results are all over the board, right? Whatever people needed, they've found. in this way of living.
Because you ignite the fire in them.
It's a black box. I have no idea what these...
You're igniting people. Like, your energy that's coming out of you, you're igniting these people. You're this guy that has the ability to really ignite others, to get people to do things they wouldn't do, to move their lives forward in massive ways, and not only ignite them, but also they can say, oh, look at Brodie. He's living all this too, and he's trying to grow in his own life, and he's being authentic and open and sharing all the great things about you, all the fucked up things, everything that's happened, good and bad. Like, you're just open. So, yeah, Brodie, this is awesome. Like, I know we have to kind of probably wrap it up today, but this right here, I almost want to leave you hanging. I want you to find out who Brodie Kern is. I want you to follow him on Instagram. Follow him on everywhere he's at. Where else are you at right now?
So I'm on Instagram, Facebook. YouTube is something we're very, very focused on right now.
Got it.
I have a podcast that I absolutely love. We put out interview episodes, and I put out a ton of solo content now, 8 to 20-minute episodes, perfect for the car.
Yeah.
It's called the Wake Up Wealthy Podcast, and that's actually the medium I'm most in love with right now.
The podcast.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's very fun.
And so, like, discover who this guy is. There's just layers after layers after layers of just more content that just comes out of him. And he's attracting an amazing team. The Brotherhood has amazing content. If you're in your 20s and you're a guy out there and you want to do something great in your life and you feel like you need to be part of something bigger, you need to be a part of a group that's impacting each other's lives in deep ways and sharing their results with each other, sharing all their learnings, all the education, like, how do I grow my business? How do I grow my body? How do I get my mind focused on what I need to do when I need to do it? How do I have better relationships? All of it, it's happening in this Brotherhood. And the stories are amazing that are coming out of this. And Brodie, I just want to thank you today for showing up, playing full out, being open and honest and as you are with everybody. And I'm so grateful to see where this calling in your life goes. Like, I mean, I really... I'm stoked to see where this goes in your life. It's been amazing just being around you, watching this, and thank you. So I'll let you close out with some words to the audience.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on, man. And, so if you guys are watching this, listening to this, the last thing that I want to leave you with is, like, wherever in your life you're feeling that resistance, wherever it is that you want to go, that person that you know you're supposed to be, that you deserve to be, that you've always wanted to be, it's real. You already are that person. That's what I need you to understand. You already have everything you need to transcend to that life that you want. The only thing you have to do is just let go. You have to let go of the stories that you're telling yourself, the baggage from your past, who you think that you are, so that you can come who you're supposed to be, who you actually are. That's it. You just have to let go of the will. You have to feel that abundance, and you will start to see the results in your life like that. It will come out of nowhere. And if you want to know more about this, if you struggle with this, if you have something that you just are afraid to share with someone, something that really, you hold on to from your past, the most powerful thing is sharing that with another human being, and you can share that with me in my Instagram DM. I will hit you. I will respond to you within minutes, a day, as soon as I can, but you share that with me so that you can let go of that.
Thank you for doing that for the audience, man. I appreciate that. That's awesome. Thanks, Brodie. And guys, thank you for watching the Fireside Chat. We'll see you next time.